Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Isiah Quiros. We have a great show for you today. We're going to check in with the LA Lakers as they are the best team in the NBA right now. We'll talk about some drama happening in Houston and discuss what it means in a stacked Western Conference. And we'll check in on the East Coast as well with some news with the Knicks, and we'll wrap it up with my top 5 for MVP so far. Now, talking about the LA Lakers because they have been absolutely dominant this year so far, and it's largely due to the fact that LeBron James is not finished. He was doubted a lot after last season. He had a bunch of injuries, and he only played in 55 games. I think that might be a career low for him. He's usually a guy that stays relatively healthy and is out there with his teammates most of the time. Last year, they were 37-45, and they missed the playoffs. That was the first time since 2005 that LeBron James has missed the playoffs, and the first time since 2010 since he missed the finals, which is absolutely crazy. For him to be as consistent as he's been just speaks to his greatness, why he's hailed as one of the greatest of all time. And his early season form has doubted a lot of his doubters, his haters. A lot of people said he might be finished, a little too old, might be starting to slow down because of all the injuries he had last year. And, finally he would maybe lose his throne. But he's done a great job about coming back this season, revitalized, and he's shown that, as well as his new partner, Anthony Davis, who's an early candidate for Defensive Player of the Year, by the way. He's just got extremely crazy length, athleticism. He can guard all positions. And the 6'10 big man is also playing at MVP level as well, averaging a team-high 26 points, team-high 9.1 rebounds, 1.4 steals, 2.7 blocks, 3.2 assists per game, and he's ranked number 3 in the league with a defensive rating of 102.7. I mean, simply put, Anthony Davis does it all for the Lakers. He's a very versatile player. Him coming over to the Lakers in the first place to join up with LeBron is just a crazy thing to even think about. But even with just those two big superstars, it's very important, and especially in this day and age, that you have key role players coming off the bench. And in the offseason, their biggest person that they were going after was Kawhi Leonard, for sure. And when they struck out on that, a lot of people said that the Lakers had a bust in the offseason, but then all of a sudden they filled out their roster extremely well. And I got to give a lot of credit to Rob Pelinka. Rob Pelinka got ditched by Magic Johnson. He literally just said, I'm out. I'm no longer going to be part of this operation anymore. Kind of dragged Rob Pelinka through the mud. A lot of people said that the Lakers organization was a joke, that Rob Pelinka didn't know what he was doing. But then he filled out the roster. And honestly, a lot of people now are coming back and talking about how he's done a great job and that they may have acted a little bit too quickly on the fact that, he didn't know what he was doing, but apparently he showed what he is capable of. I mean, a big person that he brought in was Caruso. Caruso is somebody that's a lot of fun to watch. And a Lakers organization that's been known for just dominance and gritty hard work and getting wins, Caruso brings a fun element to it as well. I mean, he is so memeable. Probably the biggest meme in the NBA right now. A lot of people call him the bald eagle because he can just take off and he's dunked on people and he's just a high energy player. I think he has the 8th best defensive rating in the NBA with a minimum of 15 minutes per game, of course. And he just brings them a spark off the bench and has been a key element to the fact that the Lakers have had such a great season so far. Another great move that a lot of people were wary of making themselves was to get Dwight Howard. And Dwight Howard's impact on this team can't be stressed enough. It is the absolute rebirth for him. His stats aren't anything to raise eyebrows at, but it's just his impact, his newfound mentality for the game, his newfound ability to just know his role and be able to try and help the team in any way that he can is really helping his ability to perform. I mean, in previous locations, like at the Magic, when everyone hailed him as Superman, he was the guy. He was the guy that you go to for a bucket. He was the guy that led your team, got a bunch of boards, got a bunch of points, and led your team to a victory. But now he's accepting a new role. He's got a new mentality, but it's with the same impact. He can do it defensively. He's a great block. He's a great person to have in the post. If people are driving into the lane, chances are he's probably going to get a block. He's shown it a bunch this season so far, and he just has a good read of the game as well, coming off of screens, closing out on people as well. And he's just been great defensively. He also is a huge lob threat. I mean, he's shown that so far this year. They have JaVale McGee starting, but Dwight Howard also comes off the bench and catches lobs, rolling off of screens and rolling to the basket. You got facilitators like Rajon Rondo, LeBron James, and others that can just throw it up to him, and he'll get up and he'll throw it down. He doesn't need much help other than that. Just throw it to him near the rim and he'll put it in the basket. He's also great at screening, obviously, because he's such a big body and so physical as well that it's impossible for people to try and break through his screens. And that gets shooters open and makes it easier for them to score, obviously. And he's also really good at facilitating as well. He gets into the low block. They throw it to him in the post, and people can either cut to the basket and he can hit him on the cut. They can have screens out on the outside around the arc and get shooters open. So he just brings a lot to the team that I think is really understated at times. And the way that he's been playing, I think a lot of people can look at him and think they might have missed out on an opportunity, especially like a team like Sacramento Kings, who are struggling right now. If they had Dwight Howard right now, instead of spending all that money on Dedmon, they could be in a lot better situation. And now instead the Lakers are in that situation, and they're better off for it. I think there are also other key players that were added to the roster as well. Danny Green, I think, is a great spot-up shooter and a perfect player for this situation. You now have LeBron playing as a point guard, so he's your facilitator. You're playing big. You have LeBron, AD, JaVale McGee. Like, that is a big roster, and so there's going to be a lot of movement into the post and a lot of kickouts, and when you kick the ball out, you need shooters, and Danny Green is exactly that. He can just catch the ball and shoot the ball. That's what he's known for, and that's what he does best, and that's what he does on this Lakers team that makes them so lethal. They need shooters around the arc, and he's one of them. KCP, another great player. He's just a high-impact player, knows his role, doesn't try to do too much, and finds ways to impact the game. Kyle Kuzma is an upcoming star. He's struggled early on this year. He's had shooting slumps or whatever, but I think he's really coming into his own, coming off the bench, knowing his role, and really taking on this six-man role. I think he could honestly be up for six-man of the year. Obviously, it's a tough competition, but Kyle Kuzma could be up in there. He's a talented player, a very gifted scorer. Just finds a way to get to the basket. He's physical. He can shoot the ball. He can fade away. He's just got all kinds of different things in his arsenal that make him great. and he can continue to be great as well, especially under LeBron next to Anthony Davis and learning from veterans on this team. But he's a great player, and he's going to be great for years to come. Quinn Cook, I think, is a good pickup too. He was great for the Warriors, just kind of a spark plug. Nothing special, of course, but can get you a couple buckets when need be. Avery Bradley's been hurt, but he can impact the game as well. And the Rondo is a great facilitator. He's a great leader. He's a veteran, so it's just good to have a mix of players, young and old, experienced and non-experienced, just to kind of round out the team. And so I think Rob Pelinka did a great job rounding out this roster, and it's shown so far. They've been a fantastic team, and it's safe to say that the Lakers have been rolling. They're 20-3 right now, I think tied for the best record in the NBA with the Bucks. But their most recent victims were the Utah Jazz and the Portland Blazers. So we can talk a little bit about those games coming up next.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by GSMC Podcasting Network. I'm Isiah Quiroz. We just talked about how great the Lakers have been this year, and why that may be. They filled out their roster extremely well, even after missing out on Kawhi. They put great pieces together and have one of the best duos in Davis and James. Both are playing at an elite and MVP-like level, and continued that the other night against the Jazz. Davis led the way with 26 points, and James had 20 points of his own and 12 assists. That's his 17th double-double in just 22 games in a rout of the Jazz. The game finished 121-96. Before getting into how they won so convincingly, let me give you a little background information. This was off a back-to-back win, and they just played the Denver Nuggets. Denver Nuggets is a great young team in the West. They came in second last year, I believe. And to come off a back-to-back playing the Nuggets and then the Jazz, who should be a pretty decent squad this year, is a great sign for the Lakers organization that they're winning games like this. I think a lot of it stems down to the fact that the Lakers are really good at defense. They're third best in the league right now, and they just have great length. They're really good at switching, good communication. They're good at cutting out passing lanes. And then when they cut out those passing lanes and they get steals, I hate to say it, but it's showtime. The Lakers burn the Jazz repeatedly in transition. I think they outscored the Utah Jazz 32-5 in fast break points. And much of that came as a result of just high-energy defense. You had players like Caruso, who's just going to run around like crazy and defend his mind out. Anthony Davis as well has got the length. He cuts out passing lanes. LeBron James can read the game really well, get some steals. And Los Angeles totaled 21 points off of 19 Jazz turnovers. And that's pretty much where the game got lost for the Jazz. They had way too many turnovers, weren't careful enough with the ball, and the Lakers made them pay, which great organizations will do if given the opportunity. Also, Rajon Rondo had a fantastic game off the bench. I mean, you don't really see him go off like this But he had 14 points and a season high of 12 assists. And he also had 8 rebounds as well. So he almost got a triple-double coming off of the bench. So he's really making his presence known and showing these young Bucks how it's done. And it's just important in a long season to have players step up like this, just because your stars can't always be the one that carry the load. And so to see him go off the way that he did is a really good sign, especially because he's a veteran, kind of towards the end of his career probably, and he's still impacting the game and finding an impact to get wins as well. The Los Angeles Lakers were extremely efficient as well. They only turned over the ball a season low 7 times. But there was a funny moment in the game where it should have been another turnover as well. LeBron James had a travel in this game that is comparable to Russell Westbrook's travel a few years back against the Golden State Warriors. LeBron was dribbling it up the court because he's the point guard on the team, and he kind of just carried the ball, took a couple steps, and continued dribbling. It looked so funny. And the referee, I think, acknowledged the fact that he saw it. I mean, he stopped for a second, kind of looked at LeBron, probably quizzically, I would assume. And then they just kept it pushing. But the Jazz were arguing for a travel call, of course, and they didn't get one in the end. But it was pretty obvious that LeBron had traveled. And later on, he said that he didn't even know what had happened, that it was just a malfunction at the end of the day. And I thought that was really funny. He also, late on in the game, had celebrated something that one of his teammates had did, but the broadcasting crew didn't appreciate the way that he was celebrating because he had his shoes off and he was on the court kind of dancing around. And they found that disrespectful, which I thought was a little strange. Having more knowledge later on in the day, LeBron had given his shoes away to a fan, which is a great way for athletes to connect with their fans and gift them with something, a remembrance of the game and just a great memento to have from a star player in this league. So I don't have any issue with the fact that LeBron gave away his shoes. Maybe he shouldn't have run out on the court because he had no shoes. But if you're celebrating with your team and you're hyping up your guys, I really have no problem with it. And LeBron's mentality is the perfect one to have. He came out and said, people will spread negativity in any way that they can, and the only thing that you can do is to just do you and keep it pushing. And so that's what he did, and I think that's a great mentality to have, because a player like him on the platform that he has, with the amount of people watching him, it's going to be difficult to not pay attention to what people say. But at the end of the day, you really just have to do what you can do, because with so many people watching you, there's going to be a million opinions, and he's just got to keep continuing to play the way that he does. There was also another funny moment in the game as well. Dwight Howard shot a 3 and actually made it in garbage time in the fourth quarter, which I thought was interesting as well. Kind of disrespectful to shoot a 3 just because you're a center. You probably don't shoot threes, probably shouldn't shoot threes, but he made it, so good for him. And then it was just more dominance in Portland as well in their last game. The Lakers won 136-113, and LeBron and AD combined for 70 points. Anthony Davis had 39 and 9 rebounds, and LeBron had 31, 7 rebounds, and 8 assists, so almost got a triple-double. But those two are a crazy duo. For them to be that productive in a game, 70 points of 136. That's more than half. They took up more than half the points just between the two of them. But it just goes to show how elite these two players are. And against a Portland team that may have been struggling this year, but have the talent to be something special if they can just put all the pieces together. And so for the Lakers to dominate as much as they have in this game, and for LeBron and AD to go off the way that they did, it's really impressive stuff. LeBron, as I said before, has been a point guard in this league, and he's leading the league right now with 10.8 assists per game. So in his newfound role as a point guard, he's really flourishing. I mean, for him to be leading the league in assists in his first year as a point guard, versus all the other point guards that we have in this league. It's very interesting to see, and it just goes to show how versatile he is, because he's been known as a low post scorer and just a dominant force on the offense. But in recent years, you could really see him develop as a facilitator as well. A big moment that stands out to me was one year when he palmed the basketball and flicked the ball to the inside, like faked it to the outside, and then flicked it to a cutter going down to the basket. At that moment, I knew that he was a ridiculous passer, has crazy vision, and just is an all-around fantastic basketball player. It's also important to mention the fact that LeBron also faced up against one of his old friends, Carmelo Anthony, who's back in the NBA. He's had a rebirth with Portland. He's been playing extremely well. I think he got a Western Conference Player of the Week. Not this week, but last week. He had 15 in this game, and he also just got his contract extended to the end of the year with Portland. So it's nice to see Carmelo back in the NBA. He deserves it. He's a future Hall of Famer. He's an elite scorer. Maybe he didn't have the right mentality back when he was having all that drama, especially in Houston. Didn't really get an opportunity. Had too much of an ego. But now he's kind of settled down. He's accepted his role a little bit more. Just finding ways to impact the team in a positive way. Just trying to score, trying to get rebounds, trying to do whatever it takes to help them win. Obviously, they didn't here. But just wanted to shout out Melo because he is a future Hall of Famer. He does deserve to be in this league. Another point from that game, Rodney Hood tore his Achilles. So I would like to say prayers up for him. That is unfortunate to see, especially nowadays with Kevin Durant just tearing his Achilles as well. You hate to see NBA players have such gruesome and serious injuries, and all you can do is wish for a speedy recovery for them because, at the end of the day, they're human, and even though they're superstars, they have to go through these things too. And you just really hate to see. You want all the players out there healthy and having a good time. So unfortunate to see, but hopefully he recovers well. Just to summarize, Lakers are now 20-3, tied for the best record in the NBA with the Milwaukee Bucks. So they are rolling. A lot of people question whether or not this whole situation would work out with LeBron, AD, and how they filled out the roster, but clearly something's working, and they're on a roll right now. We'll get into how the Bucks have been this year just a little bit and a little bit later. But before we head over to the East Coast, we're going to stop in Houston, where there has been some drama. We'll get to that right after this.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. We were just going over how dominant the Lakers have been, especially in their last two games. Anthony Davis and LeBron James are a scary duo, and they've meshed together way faster than most would have thought. They thought that, chemistry-wise, it would have taken a while for them to get a rhythm, but LeBron is just, such a great player, has such a great read for the game. And Anthony Davis is also just a phenomenal talent. So really it's not too surprising that they're meshing well at this point, but it was quicker than a lot of people thought. Now we're going to switch gears just a little bit and check out another powerhouse in the Western Conference, the Houston Rockets, who have been involved in some drama over the last couple days. Earlier this week, they had a matchup against the San Antonio Spurs. And San Antonio has been a team that has struggled this year so far. Any Greg Popovich-led team is usually a force, especially in the last few years. They're just what a team aspires to be, what an organization hopes to be because of their consistency and just their class. And that the way that they play the game is just so fundamental. But this year they have been struggling. They don't have many all-stars. They don't have any star players. They kind of just have Pop's system. And sometimes that's not enough, especially in this day and age with all the super teams. And so in this game, Houston were dominating the Spurs. I think a good way to summarize why they were dominating the Spurs, simply put, Harden had 50 in this game. James Harden has been an offensive juggernaut this season and had 50 in this game, but that's not why we're discussing this game. They were up by 13 with less than 8 remaining, and James Harden, the man who scored 50, had 2 taken away from him because he was on a fast break dunk and slammed it down just a little too hard, and the ball, it went down through the net, and it hit the net, and the net flipped it back over onto the top of the rim, and no one really understood what had happened. The refs didn't count the bucket. They didn't really understand what had happened. Harden's, freaking out, asking for the points. Houston's bench is fighting for the points, but it wasn't counted. It was not given. And Mike D'Antoni is going crazy. He's so confused, trying to figure out what the call is, what's going on, and in doing so, waiting all this time for confirmation about what's going on, he waited too long, apparently, and didn't get his challenge off in time. So he was not even able to challenge this play because he surpassed the 30-second mark in which a coach has in order to challenge a play. So the refs messed up the dunk points, didn't give Houston those points, and they messed up with the fact that they didn't give Mike D'Antoni the right appropriate amount of time to challenge the play. So it was just a mess. Anyway, the reason why this is so important is because the bucket was not counted, and all of a sudden, here come the Spurs. They rallied. They came back. They pushed it to overtime, and they pushed it to double overtime, and they ended up winning by 2 points. So, of course, Houston is not happy. I mean, I wouldn't be happy either if 2 points were taken away from me when you think you're about to go on and, put the dagger in and end this game. But they had, because they're so angry, they filed a protest with the NBA, and it said that they have 5 days to file a complaint with Commissioner Adam Silver. And Silver will rule on the protest within the 5 days after receiving evidence. So we don't have any finalized decision yet, but it is in the works. I just think that this situation is so strange. The Rockets had to pay $10,000 to protest this, and if they win their basically challenge their protest, they get that refunded. So the Rockets are requesting either just to give them the win or to have the game replayed from when the missed dunk had occurred. I think it's extremely rare in the NBA to grant a protest. According to USA Today research, the league has granted a protest just 3 times. 1978-79 season between Nets and Sixers, 1982-83 between Lakers and Spurs, and 2007 and 2008 between Hawks and the Heat. Just 1 protest out of 14 filed has been granted since 1986. So I really don't see this having any backing, really, just because I don't think there's enough here to pull it back. I understand where Houston's coming from. A missed dunk, loss of points. You think you're about to run away with the game, but like I said before, they were up by 13, well, less than 8 remaining in the game, and you let the Spurs come back into the game. I mean, you can come with the excuse with the fact that, that missed call, whatever, may have thrown you off your game, but you're professionals at the end of the day. The Houston Rockets have way too much talent and way too much capabilities to be a team that just gives up a lead like that, especially late in the game. The aspirations that they have, they want to go deep into the playoffs. You got to close out games, whether or not calls go your way or not. So I think James Harden probably should just put it down two-handed, not cause all this, but I think it's highly, highly unlikely that this game will be brought back for anything. Whether or not they give the W, definitely won't give the W. I really don't think they will just straight up hand Houston a win that they hadn't earned. Those 2 points may not have would have resulted in it not being overtime, but you have no reason to say that Spurs still couldn't have come back and pushed OT. I mean, the Spurs just pushed OT against the Kings as well. They were down, I think, 9 with a minute 30 to go against the Sacramento Kings, and they came back and pushed OT the other night. So the capability of the San Antonio Spurs are undetermined. So I think the better decision, if there is a decision here, is to, replay the final 8 minutes or so. But I think that would be really strange to see. But I really just don't see it happening. I think that the Rockets would just have to end up with the L. But even if they did get this win, how much of a factor really would it play in an extremely tight Western Conference? I mean, this Western Conference this year is super stacked. Teams are coming out of nowhere, like the Phoenix Suns are playing out of their mind. The Dallas Mavericks, really good as well. I'm going to break down that a little more right after this break.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. We just broke down one of the weirdest non-calls in NBA history. Probably, at least. I mean, yeah, it's probably one of the weirdest plays I've ever seen, personally. And how the Rockets are just bitter about it, of course, after taking an L. But the West is incredibly tight. It's a very long season. So really, how big of a deal is this? Well, we should just break it down based off of, how the West looks right now. The Lakers are at the top, of course. We talked about it earlier. They rule the West. They are the best team in the NBA next to the Milwaukee Bucks. We already broke them down. LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Caruso with the fun, Dwight Howard, the rebirth, and just key players that are contributing here and there, and just really, pulling a team along to a championship pedigree. It seems like they're going in that direction for sure. The surprise in the West for me is Dallas. The Dallas Mavericks are in second as of right now. How? I'm not sure. It's probably just because of a guy named Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic this year is playing out of his mind. He is coming into his second year in the NBA. There was a lot of hype about him last year. He won Rookie of the Year, and it was a close race. Well, some thought it was close. Some thought it was not even a contest between him and Trae Young. And the thing about Luka is he's just such a special and naturally gifted talent. I mean, he's not even really that athletic. the thing that's going for him is he's super crafty. He can read the game really well. He has so many ways to find ways to score, whether he's driving in low, whether he's fading away from the elbow. He can hit the deep ball. He can go Steph Curry range and knock down buckets for his team. And he can carry his team clearly if Dallas is in second, because they don't have that many pieces. They really don't. They have a couple of, contributors here and there. Porzingis is nothing what he was back in the day when he was in MVP conversations. He's kind of not really gone back into his rhythm since being injured. I'm sure that'll change soon, at least. He's got to get his legs underneath him, got to get a flow for the game as well. He still contributes. He's about 18, 19 points per game. Obviously gathering up rebounds as well, but it's Luka Doncic who has really elevated Dallas to a new level this year. And a lot of people were sleeping on Dallas in the beginning of the year. They didn't think that in this stacked Western Conference they would be able to find a way to break into playoff contention, but a lot of people had them sneaking in maybe towards the back end, but now second place. I mean, nothing more can be said than that. It's really impressive stuff. The Denver Nuggets are in third place as of right now, and the Denver Nuggets are an extremely gifted and young team. They have a lot of good pieces. They really pushed the Warriors last year in the Western Conference race. They ended up in second, and the Warriors ended up taking first towards the back end of the season. But Denver has so much potential. Jamal Murray, I believe he has a couple All-Star appearances. If not, he did get his last one last year. He's really coming to his own as a shooter, as a facilitator, and just an all-around great leader for this Nuggets team. And he's really, developed well, even though the other night, not sure if all of you have seen this, but the other night he played against the Sacramento Kings, and the Denver Nuggets were down 3, and he needed a 3. He had the ball in his hands 9 seconds to go, and he dribbled it out to lose the game to the Sacramento Kings. So a little mental lapse there. If you're the main guy on the team, you need to pull up for a 3, find a way to get another one of your players a 3, tie the game. But he ran out the clock, and it was definitely a learning lesson for this young team. But he's not the only one on the team that makes this team work so well. Another one, of course, has to be talked about, Jokic. He is fantastic. There can't be enough said about him. He doesn't seem like he'd be an athletic guy at all, but somehow he makes things happen. He finds way to get triple doubles, by just walking around. He's not a super fast guy. He's not super athletic, but he finds ways to score, and he is just such a big body, such a big presence. He's extremely tall. His length is incredible, and he is one of the best stretch 5s in the game, probably. He is MVP caliber type of player, and he's a big reason why this Denver Nuggets team is so successful. Him and Jamal Murray, great pairing. I think Harris as well. He contributes pretty well as well. But yeah, Denver is a team that will be good in the West for years to come for sure. Los Angeles Clippers are coming in at 4th place. I think they're underperforming right now. They won the lottery. They won the lottery more than they even thought the lottery was going to be. The lottery was Kawhi Leonard in the offseason. Everyone wanted Kawhi Leonard. Los Angeles Clippers got that. But not only that, they got Paul George. I mean, this year, the Clippers, in my opinion, should be the best team in the NBA. They have that potential. They have all the pieces to be that successful. Paul George has been injured this year. Kawhi Leonard has been injured this year. They've had struggles with injuries. I don't think the two of them have played together that much yet. So them being in 4th place right now, I don't think that's where they're going to end up. I think they'll probably end up in 1st. If not, definitely 2nd, right behind the Lakers, who are still dominating. But the Clippers have such great pieces. Kawhi Leonard led Toronto to a championship last year. He carried them. I mean, Siakam did have a breakout year. Great player. Fred VanVleet. Yeah, Fred VanVleet, I believe. Yeah, he was a great point guard as well. Had a breakout series. Kyle Lowry, good, whatever. But Kawhi Leonard was the reason why Toronto was such a force last year. And he shut down Giannis in the Eastern Conference Finals. So to have him on your team is a huge step up. And Paul George as well. He's going to be an offensive force when he gets back. He's also one of the best 2 guards in the league. So the LA Clippers are a force to be reckoned with for sure. And they're sitting just 4th place right now. So they are underperforming in my opinion because they have probably one of the best defenses in the league if everyone's healthy. Kawhi's locked down. Paul George locked down. Beverly is a high-energy player, so I think high energy helps when it comes to defense. But yeah, and then Montrezl Harrell as well. He had a breakout year last year. I think he can be a Draymond-esque type of player. So they have great pieces, and I think they're going to be in contention for a championship this year. They did just get smacked by the Milwaukee Bucks, so they have a lot of work to do, but they have a great leader in Doc Rivers, and they have a great squad, so it's definitely possible for the Clippers to turn this season around and find a way to win. And then coming in 5th is the Houston Rockets. But what's crazy about this is the Houston Rockets are in 5th, but they're just 1 game out of 2nd. So 2 through 5 are separated by just 1 game. That just shows you how close this race is going to be. I mean, it's early on, and it's a long season, so there's load management to think about. There's, other matchups to think about, but as of right now, how close it's going to be, it's going to be an interesting race, and it's interesting to see how it's going to turn out as well. But Houston, I think, are underperforming as well. They can definitely be a top 3 team in the West if Russell Westbrook and James Harden can coexist together for the whole season. I think they've done a pretty good job so far. Russell hasn't been as egotistical as he's been in the past. I think James Harden is playing out of his mind, another MVP caliber season. He just seems to find ways to step it up each year. PJ Tucker coming off the bench, he's a great guy, a great high energy guy. Eric Gordon as well finds ways to score and impact the game when, Russell Westbrook is lacking or when James Harden's lacking. And who else do they have? Capella. Capella is another great force. He could be the best center in the league if he could just find his consistency because he's just so tall, such a great rim presence and blocker and finisher at the top as well. The West rounds out with Utah, Phoenix, and Minnesota in the final playoff spots. Utah, another team I think is underperforming. I think they have a great team. Donovan Mitchell should have been Rookie of the Year a couple years past. Lost out to Ben Simmons. They just added, what's his name, from the Grizzlies. I'm blanking right now, but they have another point guard they just added who's really, really good. They have Ingles, who is just a 3-point shooter, and Gobert, who should be one of the best centers in the league as well. So they should definitely be performing. Phoenix is the surprise. Definitely didn't expect them to be in 7th right now. But Devin Booker and, the rest of their young squad are just doing business right now. They're taking care of business. And Minnesota is a wild card for me. I think they could either be really good or they can be really bad. I mean, it's hard to tell sometimes with Minnesota, but this year Wiggins is having a great year. So is Cat. Those two are meshing extremely well. And it's interesting to see how close this Western Conference race really is, even without the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors have dominated the West for the last 5 years, but they are so bad this year. They are terrible. They have the worst record in the West with 5-19. So it's really bad. It's a rebuilding year for the Warriors. They have a lot of injuries, so you can make excuses that way. But yeah, they are the worst in the West for sure. But even though they're the worst in the West, they're still not the worst team in the NBA. I'll let you take a guess at who that might be during this commercial break.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. We just broke down the Western Conference and just how competitive it is this year. I mean, 2 through 5, like we talked about, are separated by just one game right now, which is crazy. And that's without the Golden State Warriors as well. They've had a rough year, obviously, but not as rough as the New York Knicks. And it just got even worse for the Knicks. They have fired their coach, David Fizdale. Fizdale had a 4-year contract, and he was only in year 2. So the question becomes, was this a good decision? Was this more self-harm from the Knicks? Greg Popovich actually came out with a quote defending Fizdale. And it reads, quote, "I don't know where the decision was made to fire Coach Fizdale, but it came from the top. It's a case of mistaken identity. He's a fine, talented young coach with great pedigree, and it's ridiculous to think you're going to bring in a guy, and after being there a minute and a half, you expect him to fix everything that's been wrong there for a long time. That's pretty unfair." End quote. I definitely agree with Greg Popovich and where he's coming from. The Knicks organization has been struggling, especially in recent years. They used to be hailed as the basketball world mecca, the team that, you know, people want to aspire to be. But now they're just the joke of the NBA, and it's really sad to see. Let's just do a little recap of what the Knicks have done in the last year. They tanked last year. They were hoping for Zion Williamson, as every other team in the NBA was tanking. And they also freed up a lot of cap space, hoping for 2 big superstars. So their plan was KD, Kyrie, and Zion. But guess what? None of that happened. They literally didn't get any big-name player at all. They had a couple of, a decent job filling out their roster. And they did draft really well with RJ Barrett. I mean, he will be a star in the future. He's a great player and has a lot of potential, but he is not Zion Williamson. He is not a generational player. He'll be a good player. He'll have impact in the future for sure. But I just don't think that, he'll be anything extremely special. They are 4-18 this season, And it's important to mention, Fizdale was 21-83 in less than 2 seasons with the Knicks. Now, you can't put this all on him. It's not his fault because the roster has just been bad. The organization as a whole is just bad, and they are just straight up bad. So, there's not a lot of options for them as of right now. I think their best chance is probably just to, tank again and hope for a better chance with the lottery. But the way that it went last year with the lottery pick going to New Orleans, I really just don't see that being a viable option for them at this point, because you can't rely on that. You have to find ways to build your organization better. I feel like they put together decent pieces in the offseason, but they need a star. They need a face that is willing to be the face of the New York Knicks, and they just don't have that right now. They could try and tank, like I said, get a lottery, and maybe get LaMelo Ball. I mean, he's looking like a top prospect, and that kid can do it all. I mean, people joke about it because LeVar's his dad, and because, they're like the Kardashians of the NBA world, but he really could be something special. I think he could be a generational talent. He's super athletic. He's so tall. He has incredible passing ability. Most of the plays that I watched him do that impressed me the most aren't the step back threes, aren't the drives down into the lane. It's some of his passes, his vision, his ability to get the pass off in tight situations. And he can also finish really well under the basket too. I'm not sure about his shooting form. He might have to switch it up kind of like his brother did. But he has pieces to be something special. But yeah, the Knicks have promoted assistant Mike Miller to interim head coach. So unfortunate for Mike Miller. Sorry about that. Your first coaching job is going to be with the NBA's worst organization right now. And that also took away any chance of possibly Metta World Peace being the Knicks head coach. He sent out a tweet saying if the job is available, he would be down to take it. And he would bring some East Coast vibes. He said he would, revitalize the team, would love to do that. And I think it would have been really interesting to see if Metta World Peace had taken over the New York Knicks and found a way to be successful. But obviously that will never happen. So we'll just have to wait and see what team Metta World Peace takes on, because apparently he's into coaching and apparently he wants an opportunity. Yeah, the New York Knicks are really bad. So let's talk about the polar opposites in the East, and that's the Milwaukee Bucks. They are absolutely rolling right now. They are playing really well. They should be talked about as much as I talked about the Los Angeles Lakers. They're 20-3 as well. Not second best, tied for the best record in the NBA. And 20-3 is matched their best stat through 23 games in team history since 1970 and 1971 when they had Kareem. I mean, Kareem, of course, makes sense. Now they got a new name, Giannis. So they won their last 4 games by 137 points. They beat the Clippers by 28, Charlotte by 41, New York, just talked about them, sorry New York. They beat New York by 44, and they beat Detroit by 24 in the last 4 games. So they're just steamrolling their opponents. They're not just winning games at this point. They are steamrolling the competition. There is no one that can stop this team, and a big reason is because of Giannis. Giannis is he is a generational talent. The fact that he's as young as he is, he just celebrated his birthday, so happy belated birthday, Giannis, if you're listening to this. I doubt it, but that'd be really cool. Happy belated birthday. For him to be as young as he is and as dominant as he is, coming off an MVP season, and to elevate it just that much higher is crazy for me. You talk about LeBron James and how he's been the face of the NBA for as long as he has been, but with all these new age talents like Luka Doncic and Giannis taking over, and other players as well, it's really cool to see that Giannis is his growth as well. I mean, when he came into the league, he was just a tall, scrawny player that can get in the post and get some dunks because of his length and because he was physical. But he's put on some weight too. I mean, not like bad weight. He's put on some muscle weight, and now the dude is jacked. He's super tall and he's jacked. So try and stop that in the post. I dare you. It's going to be extremely difficult to do so. But yeah, in this last game that he played against the Clippers, who should be a great team in the NBA, this is a finals matchup between the Clippers and the Bucks. I think that probably will be the finals, in my opinion. That's my early season guess. But the Clippers just did not perform. They didn't play well at all. I think this is one of the few games that Kawhi and Paul George were able to play together. And it just didn't go according to plan at all. And a lot of that had to do with Giannis. He had 27 points. He had 11 rebounds. And so this was his 21st double-double and 20th 2010 game in 23 games this season, which is insane to get that volume and be that efficient each and every game is really, really astounding. To average over 2010 is really special to see, but it makes sense because, like I said, he did have an MVP season last year, and with his length and his physicality, he should be and is expected to be this proficient in what he does, and he's just an absolutely great leader for the Milwaukee Bucks, and the reason why they're so successful. This team does not function the way that it does without Giannis Antetokounmpo. So he's an MVP caliber player, but is he the front runner? I give you my top 5 MVP leaders as of right now after this.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. We just dove in to the ongoing struggles of the New York Knicks. I apologize, Knicks fans. I really hope it gets better for you. And we also talked a little bit about how Giannis is an absolute freak of nature. And honestly, it's just unfair to play against him. But is he the front runner for MVP? This is a huge, huge, huge discussion. People talk about this all year long, even if it's way too early to even talk about it. But early season predictions for MVP, there are obvious candidates, and yes, I did go with those obvious candidates, but in reverse order. Actually, one that isn't too obvious. A lot of people probably wouldn't even have him on their list, but coming in at number 5 on my list is Kemba Walker. Right. Not a lot of people are going to think Kemba Walker should be in the top 5 for the MVP list, but let me explain. He moved to Boston in the offseason. He finally left Charlotte, where he's been the guy. He's been the one that has had to carry the offensive load and had to have all the pressure put on him in Charlotte. They haven't been successful, and so, he's put in his time, and he finally said, you know what, I'm going to move on. A slot opened up because Kyrie left to Brooklyn, so Kemba jumped at the opportunity, and, it's fair for him to do so. He deserves it. He's a great player. So he moved to Boston, and now the team is just playing better. They are in and not a tough Eastern Conference. There are better pieces over there. I think Toronto has been playing really well, even though they lost Kawhi Leonard. Siakam is probably the reason why they're being so successful as they are. They are the defending champs, so you got to respect them for sure, but I just don't see them being a big threat. Milwaukee's obviously the top, but Boston's just a better team ever since he's gotten there. It's pretty much the same exact team that it was last year, minus Kyrie. And I think that has a lot to do with it. Kyrie wasn't necessarily a bad influence on the team, but a lot of negativity seemed to swirl around Kyrie during the season. He was always part of discussions about whether or not he's going to leave, if he's really committed to Boston at all, if he is a leader. A lot of things were brought into question about Kyrie, so I think that was a big distraction. You don't really have that with Kemba, and Kemba isn't necessarily the same type of player as Kyrie. He doesn't have the same mentality as him. He's not as egotistical, I don't think. Not to say that Kyrie is egotistical, but he definitely does demand a lot more, I think, and Kemba's more about the team. This year he's averaging 21.8 points, 4.6 rebounds, and 5 assists. He did have a little bit of a scary injury just a couple weeks ago. Thankfully, he's okay and he's back, but he just elevates his teammates. Jaylen Brown is playing above himself, having one of his better years. Jason Tatum as well has elevated his game. Both of them are averaging just more points than they usually do in years past. And overall, just being more productive. So really, same squad, different point guard, and I think new results, and I think he's the reason why, and that's why he's in my top 5. Number 4 for me is James Harden. He probably could be argued to be higher in the top 5, but I'll get to my top 3 in a minute and tell you why he's not. But this is an obvious choice for top 5. Dude is crazy. He can just score at will. He just finds ways to score. He's averaging 38.7 points. Like, are you kidding me? That's like insane. Nearly 40 points per game he's averaging. That's almost unheard of. He's also averaging 6.1 rebounds and 7.5 assists. So he's being productive, not only scoring, but finding ways to make his teammates better too. 7.5 assists is pretty good. He probably gets the most touches. He shares it with Russell Westbrook, of course, but he probably is the one that gets the most touches. He has the ball in his hands most of the time. But he's just so versatile, and he can score in a million different ways. He's a left-handed basketball player, which makes it difficult on assignment for, the defenders because they're used to, guarding mostly right-handers, so I think that probably helps a little bit in his benefit. But even though he's left-handed, he can move to the right. He actually likes going to the right and stepping back. It's just more comfortable for him. When he drives to the left, he can find an open lane and get to the basket. And when he gets to the basket, if he doesn't put it in right away, he makes sure he gets fouled so that he can put it in later. James Harden is one of the players in the NBA that has really taken a hold of how to finesse the system. He finds ways to get to the line and just get points. He understands how the refs make their calls, and he understands what he has to do in order for them to make those calls. And so a lot of people can say that this is smart basketball IQ. I personally don't like seeing it just because it's boring for me to watch a guy try and get to the line all the time. I'd much rather him just beat you on pure skill, which he can because he has that ability. But, whatever he's got to do to get wins, he's doing. And I think that's important. And that definitely attributes to the fact that he's got 38.7 points per game on the year so far. If he keeps at this rate, he'll definitely go higher in my top 5 for sure. Number 3, I have to say it, LeBron James. We talked about him earlier this year, his revitalization and just the way that he's been playing. He's got 25.6 points per game this year, 10.7 assists, and 7 rebounds. So he's almost averaging a triple-double, which, at this point, I feel like could be expected from him. He's the type of player that he's so physical, and he's just a physical specimen. People wish that they could have, the big physical body that he has. But yeah, I think he's also just a great force on both ends of the floor. He finds ways to be an impact player on defense and on offense because he'll score at will. Like, if he wants to go and score a basket, I think he has the ability to do so whenever he wants because of how physical he is and how athletic he is. and his basketball IQ as well. He's just naturally gifted and finds a million ways to score. But on the defensive end as well, he can guard 1 through 5. He can be physical with the bigs. He can get low with the guards. And I mean, he's shown it plenty of times. His most iconic block ever was a chase down block against Iguodala in the finals that eventually led to them winning the NBA Finals. I hate to mention, because I am a Golden State Warriors fan. Just want to throw that out there. It kind of sucked. Anyway, LeBron James is great on both ends of the floor, so this really helps his case as an MVP candidate. And the fact that he's been in his prime longer than anyone I've ever seen. I mean, can you think of another person that's been in their prime for as long as LeBron has? He's been the king of the NBA for almost his entire career. When he came in as a rookie, he was, dominant. And I think a few years into it, he really hit his stride. I think probably Miami is probably his top peak form. So from 2010 to 2019, 9 years of dominance, just ridiculous. So yeah, he's number 3 on my list. Number 2 on my list is Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic is almost averaging a triple-double right now. He's got 30.3 points, 10.1 rebounds, and 9.2 assists. It's his second year in the NBA. Let me say it again. It's his second year in the NBA. He is ridiculous. I mean, to be this good just 2 years into your NBA career is really scary to see, because, most of the time you probably hit your prime, 26, 27 in the NBA, and he's probably only like 20, 21 right now. It is just scary to even think about, but he is going to take over the NBA the next couple years, and he is carrying the Mavs right now. We talked about it earlier, the Mavericks are in second place in the Western Conference, and largely due to the fact that they have Luka Doncic. I mean, he's so crafty. He has a million ways to score. He can find passes. He can obviously rebound if he's averaging over 10 rebounds a game. And the Mavs really, really aren't that good, but Luka is. And Porzingis, what we talked about, he's been pretty good. They've got contributors in Seth Curry, Powell off the bench, Hardaway, but really it's just the Luka show, and the reason why he's number 2 on my list right now. But of course, number 1, we talked about him earlier, Giannis Antetokounmpo is my number 1 right now for the MVP race, and the only reason why Luka isn't. Because this guy is just, what more can I say about him? They have the best record in the East, tied for the best in the NBA. He's averaging 30.8 points, 13.1 rebounds, and 5.4 assists. He just had an MVP last year, and he's doing even better than he did last year. So to win an MVP and then up your game is very rare to see. The last person I saw do that, I think, was Stephen Curry when he won back-to-back MVP. So I think Giannis is taking taking a page out of Steph Curry's book and trying to do the same thing. And I haven't even mentioned most of another part of his game that's just so impressive is his defense. His defense is crazy good. I mean, he's got such long arms, such quick feet. I think he has like 1.3 steals, 1.3 blocks as well. So he's just a force all over the floor. And so it's evident to me that he deserves to be number 1 right now. If the MVP was given, it would be to him right now. A couple honorable mentions I'd like to mention. Anthony Davis, who gets it done on both ends of the floor. We talked about him earlier. And Pascal Siakam, who is leading Toronto and really coming into his own as a star in this league. I think he's going to be very special. Really quickly, I want to say a couple Rookie of the Year candidates. Very briefly, Pascal from the Warriors. He's been the bright spot for them. They haven't been very good all year, but he has. John Morant on the Grizzlies. They have a very bad situation right now, but he has been very good. He's leading the rookies in both points per game and assists with 18.6 and 6.4 respectively. And Kendrick Nunn, he was recently named Eastern Conference Rookie of the Month, so he's got a lot of capabilities as well. So we'll probably break that down in future podcasts, but for now, this is where we're going to end it. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask you to please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review because that would really help us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'm Isiah Kiddos. Thank you. Have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.